Hi, I'm Liz Morton and I work for EPI-USE Labs. I'm an account manager in the account team and I work in the EUROE division. I'm really pleased to welcome Barry Dewey, Head of SAP Support and Release Management at Vodafone, and he's going to share their SAP release strategy with us that he's been working on at Vodafone. And I'm really pleased you could join us, Barry. Hello, thank you. Let's start. Tell me about your role at Vodafone and a little bit about Vodafone Group Services for those that don't know that the company's divided up into various divisions also.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Liz, and thank you for the opportunity to join the webinar today. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to tell everybody what we're doing at Vodafone.
Indeed.
So at Vodafone, I am the release and deployment manager within what we call a division called IT Platforms. So predominantly that's looking at a global SAP estate. So we have a single instance of SAP across 22 countries, about 160,000 users on a single instance of SAP. So I manage the release and deployment, the various releases, the change management function to move the changes through the landscape and the environment. I look after the SOX controls that come with change management, and I also look after configuration management. So a bit of a mixed bag, but it's nonetheless it's pretty busy and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, keeps you busy and out of mischief, Barry.
It needs to. Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about the SAP release strategy. You know, what is all that about? You know, what are you delivering to the business, the stakeholders, and some of the challenges and issues that your new release strategy might have uncovered, and sort of how you've been able to address those things to deliver the service to the business.
So interestingly, it started about transformation of our release and deployment strategy started about just over 2 years ago, and weirdly enough, it was when I broke my leg. So I was pretty high on all sorts of drugs and sort of hallucinating drugs, which sort of I think helped with the strategy somewhat. But nonetheless, the strategy was really to how do we radically change what we've been doing in Vodafone in our SAP estate for the last 10 years. And as you can imagine, we have many transformational programs that are happening concurrently. We have lots of M&A, acquisitions, mergers, big transformational programs that are constantly on the go, and also we have a pretty heavy sort of change program as well from a sort of BAU change release perspective. So what we did, we interviewed about 60 of our stakeholders across the business and technology, to try and really understand where they see what we do as a release and deployment function. Where do we really need to transform, not only to be better at what we do, but also to support their own individual strategies. And out of that, we had sort of the feedback was categorized into sort of 4 key pillars, really. And the first pillar was really about moving away from these sort of very fixed and rigid releases that we have in our SAP landscape. So we used to do 2 big regression releases a year, and one of those included an upgrade. And then we'd have a number of minor releases, which were sort of non-regression impacting releases, and we'd have one of those maybe every month, maybe every other month. So that's what we were coming from a sort of a very fixed, rigid release schedule. And given the complexity of our environment and the number of systems, that was what we thought we could manage, and that's sort of historically going back and say maybe 7-10 years. And we wanted to move to how do we move away from this sort of more fixed 6-monthly regression release? How do we move to something which is more suitable, and also trying to adopt more agile ways of working? And SAP and agile or CI/CD delivery they don't really fit very well, right? The technology doesn't really allow you to easily do sort of continuous integration, continuous delivery. It fights you all the way. But nonetheless, we define a brand new release calendar. So now we've got releases that happen. We have a regression release or a major release that happens every 8 weeks, and we have what we call our drops or minor releases. They now happen pretty much every week, except for the month end week, where we sort of keep the level of change in the system somewhat more controlled and more less frequent. So moving away from this sort of big, sort of heavy lifting 6-month release to 8-week releases and drops nearly every week, and the challenges that comes with. So we'll look at how we got there later on. Also, we had a lot of discussion about the environment. So if we have a lot of our environments are on SAP HANA, so how do we move away from, when we need to acquire new systems, when we need to spin up play systems, sandpit systems, test systems, and the like? Normally, we'd have to order the kit. It'd be hosted in our data center in Germany. The lead times would be anywhere from about 4 or 5 months from the point of order to having it racked and cabled in the data center. And how do we move that from being, a 4 to 5 month lead time to being up and running in 4 days? So this was, so how do we, and not only that, but how do we move it away from this 4-month lead time, but having build systems, spin up systems within 4 days with data that's scrambled, with data that's clearly anonymized. We moved our landscape from a 5-tier landscape to a 3-tier landscape, which is no easy feat, just given the volume of project change and the volume of BAU change. And also then how do we start looking at moving our SAP estate into the cloud? So that was the sort of the environment piece of the strategy, where people wanted faster systems. They don't want to wait months for a project system. They want to, request it spun up with good quality data, although anonymized. And the other strategy then was around data. So we were getting really good feedback from our stakeholders that they needed better data in our test systems. So before to do a copy back of the data would take us about 3 weeks to do the copy back and all the post copy back steps. And then the vision was to get that down to, we could do copy backs in a weekend. So that was the sort of the broad strategy across those sort of 3 key pillars, and moving to more agile ways, more flexible ways of delivery, reducing the number of environments, becoming more agile, embracing cloud, better data, more flexible data refreshes. Then there was a whole piece around automation, about how do we automate more what we do, because I think generally we are deemed within the Vodafone organization as being very good, but we're very manual. So how do we embrace tools like SAP Solution Manager, Charm? How do we use tools like EPI-USE, around the sort of data sync manager? How do we use more tooling to really help us what we're doing to improve how we deliver our services to our business? So that was the sort of strategy. That was the light bulb moment whilst on the sofa with a broken leg.
On the hallucinogenic drugs. Yeah,
pretty
sounds
much.
Like a good strategy to kind of come up with, and I guess the things that you want to deliver of flexibility and agility in your kind of your DevOps environment, and put that automation in there. And I guess it's kind of a roadmap, not a big bang kind of thing. It's kind of iterative changes and making those various steps to improve that automation by using some tools, using the intelligence in the business, and also listening to the people that you deliver to, your customers within Vodafone, so the test teams and what have you.
No, yeah, I think that's very key, right? I mean, the strategy was based on the feedback from our customers or our stakeholders. So this is what they were telling us that they needed for their own strategies. I think Vodafone as an organisation is, really driving some more product organisational discussions, driving more sort of agile, more safe sort of framework of delivery. And it's not easy in an SAP context. It really isn't easy. And so that was the challenge. How do we really take something that's and for those that are watching this webinar are using SAP systems, it's really not straightforward to be able to manage a 3-tier landscape, doing releases every week, doing major regression releases every 8 weeks. There was a lot of stakeholder buy-in needed. There's a lot of complexity around processes, around remaining SOX compliant. So all these things, needed to be put into a sort of a significant sort of size internal program. So we did it all with Vodafone resources, and obviously key partners like yourselves with EPI-USE to really support us on the data strategy on how we and really sort of tick the sort of the data availability part of the strategy.
Yeah, I guess your job then in the last few months has been, taking that strategy and then pulling all of the kind of the component parts together, from kind of, the practical things that the stakeholders are looking for to, managing suppliers and different tools, because it's not a kind of a one thing that's going to, provide the solution. I guess the question that a lot of people will ask is what kind of, what is the value that you're going to deliver to the
Yeah.
Vodafone business, and why is that important for Vodafone? Why is this release strategy in the SAP context valuable and important to Vodafone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think primarily it's about delivering value to the business earlier. So in the old ways of working, 2 major releases a year. It depends when you hit that release cycle. A business may have to have waited 8 or 9 months for some new functionality that required a regression test. So from a business perspective, you can imagine the frustration saying, yes, we want this new piece of functionality. This is going to radically transform the business or improve the business, increase revenue, reduce debt or whatever. Yes, we can do that for you, but you can have it in 9 months' time. You can imagine that conversation isn't a very sort of positive conversation.
Yeah.
So, to be able to then say, fine, well, we have releases every 8 weeks. So, choose your release. And if it's a minor release, then they happen pretty much every week. So, So I think that was primarily how do we deliver value sooner to the business without having to wait a lot longer. But also we needed to maintain the quality. So, the internal SAP systems are fundamental to Vodafone's operations. We're in quite a strict compliance environment, as you can imagine. So maintaining the quality, maintaining the controls, but increasing the cadence and the speed of which we deliver, needed a program of key resources, and using partners and tools to really help us along the journey. So SAP key, EPI-USE key, amongst others, that were really sort of supporting us on this journey. And that moving to a 3-tier landscape is from a cost saving perspective is significant.
I think your journey to the cloud is going to deliver significant savings as well, because moving down to the 3-tier landscape, but then also creating those lean, secure, non-production systems will help that process. And I think that's quite important for sort of looking after the cost of running an SAP environment for the business. It's a fact of life. You do need those test systems. You've got to test the new functionality before they're put into production. I guess lots of other customers that talk to us, and we hear about this kind of refinement of this sort of dinosaur type process. In the early days when we only had very small systems, the old ways of working worked quite well. But when you get to that sort of mass amount of data, and I know your systems are really quite large, these things become sort of very cost driven, as well as sort of the practical delivery of those systems for the business. What's your kind of advice, other than obviously being in a motorbike accident and being high on those painkilling drugs? What would your advice be to other organizations that are kind of looking at similar strategies to kind of reduce the overhead, reduce the pain, increase the flexibility, and looking at those kind of release strategies?
Yeah, I think one is having faith in your conviction, and the fact that not many organizations are doing what we were aspiring to do didn't mean that we couldn't have a go. I think having that culture of having a safe environment to learn and experiment. So Vodafone is very much supportive of those ways of thinking and those ways of behaviours. It's the fact you're having a go and you're trying, and that you're trying to change is certainly seen as a really positive trait within the organisation. So people aren't afraid to fail, right? It's a safe environment to, you fail, if you're going to fail, you need to fail fast. But that having that support and that buy-in from the exec is really, really key. That they sort of trust you, and they you're going to have a go and you're going to give it your best shot. I think that's really, really key. I think obviously the transformation needs people's buy-in. So that I think the first probably year of the strategy was really bringing our stakeholders along and trying to convince and trying to show and trying to we went out to other organisations outside of Vodafone to understand what's happening in industry. Where is SAP going with this? Where some of the Google going with these sort of SAP environments? Is 3-tier completely crazy, or is this becoming the new norm? So getting some sort of reassurances from sort of these hyperscalers as well in terms of what the trends that they're seeing in the marketplace was key. I think obviously tools, you can't really do this without tools, right? You need to invest in tools, you need to invest in skills for the people in the organization. So SAP Solution Manager is key from a charm perspective to manage change and cross system object locking. You can't deliver high volume change in a 3-tier landscape without understanding how locks happen within the environment. So tooling is key, making sure the processes are, investing in people and processes is key, making sure we can remain compliant. So compliance is making sure we've got security, we've got SOX, we've got all the people on board, that making sure that we're not leaving ourselves exposed. So I think that probably the learning for me is it can be done, and we're doing it. And I tried to find other organisations of similar size, sort of our peer group, to see who've doing this level of transformation, and there aren't many. So the fact we've done it, we're now live, and we are running releases every 8 weeks. We're doing minor releases every week. It's testament to what the team have achieved, and it can be done, and in the 3-tier landscape. So,
I kind of know that you've got a really good team around you as well, and I think that helps. The people that we work with in the team are very engaged, they're very switched on, they embrace the recommendations that we make, certainly around our piece of the jigsaw. And I think for me, that's one of the kind of number one key tips that I would take away from the experience of, working with our team and the Vodafone team. I'm conscious our time is up. Thank you so much for sharing. And, again, these kind of conversations that we're having with some of our customers are really valuable within the sort of the collaborative environment we try to create between all our customers. You're all in different industries, and, maybe some of you are competitive, but you all fundamentally have the same problems around this release strategy. So thank you for sharing that, and I hope that others that listening to our little conversation do take some advice from you, and also some hope that it can be done. You just need the courage of your convictions.
Indeed. Absolutely. Thank you, Liz.
Barry.
Lovely to talk to you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.